We both here are trying to empower women. And there's structural issues, but there's also critical thinking and emotional issues that also impact on our capacity, and I hate to use the term, but to be the best of who we are when we're under pressure. Would you agree with that? You are listening to the Why Smart Women podcast, the podcast that helps smart women work out why we repeatedly make the wrong decisions and how to make better ones. From relationships, career choices, finances, to faux fur jackets and kale smoothies. Every moment of every day, we're making decisions. Let's make them good ones. I'm your host, Annie McCubbin, and as a woman of a certain age, I've made my own share of really bad decisions. Not my husband. I don't mean him, though. I did go through some shockers to find him. And I wish this podcast had been around to save me from myself. This podcast will give you insights into the working of your own brain, which will blow your mind. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm recording, and you are listening on this day. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. Well, hello, smart women, and welcome back to the Why Smart Women podcast. It's me, Annie McCubbin, here recording from Bronte, which for all of those of you who are unfamiliar with Sydney, Australia, but may have heard of Bondi, it's right next to Bondi. And today I have the intense pleasure of, now I'm going to make sure I say your name right, because before we came on, we had a little chat about how to pronounce your name. And it's Dune Ruchin. And I'm just going to give you a little potted history of Doone. So Doone is a globally recognised entrepreneur, innovator and champion for women's economic empowerment. So that must be how come you know Pascal, is it? Is that right because of that, Doone?
Yes, I had her on the show like a couple of years ago. We got connected through Glenn from My Millennial Money, which is rebranded to Smart Money, I think. And he connected us and we had a great chat and we kept in touch. And then I caught up with her recently, just before you interviewed her, I think, when she was launching her book.
Yes.
And yeah, I think I'm actually seeing her this week for a swim.
Oh, say hello from me. I caught up with her a couple of weeks ago with Tracy Hall, who's also been on the podcast. And Tracy Hall is the one that was financially scammed through an intimate partner.
Oh, Jesus.
It's really, really bad. Just the worst story you can imagine. Sorry, I've diverted myself already. So she's the founder and host of the Female Startup Club, where they share insights from 700 plus female founders generating 7, 8 and 9 figures in annual revenue. I'd like that.
Yeah.
I would like to be generating that, just saying.
We've had 2 on the show that have been 100 million plus.
Is that
annually.
true?
Yeah,
I want that. Okay, I'll talk to you about that later. So Doone's show, and I'm not that happy about this because I would like to be in this position, ranks in the top 0.5% of all podcasts globally. Like, oh my God. And is celebrated for his actionable girlfriend-to-girlfriend, because that's what we're doing really, isn't it? We're having a girlfriend-to-girlfriend conversation.
Little gibber-gabber.
Yeah, don't you reckon? And that inspires women to build wealth and impactful businesses. So I met Doone when you were at Techstars, and wouldn't tell me about Techstars and what you were doing there?
Yeah, gosh. Techstars, it feels like such a world ago.
I know.
It was only a couple of months ago.
It was like November, December, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think we started in September 9, and we finished December 5th-ish.
Yeah.
So Techstars is a business accelerator that is kind of global. It started out, I think, maybe in Boston, and what it does is it helps entrepreneurs who are in the early stages of building their business kind of accelerate from wherever they are. So it gives you investment, it gives you a 3-month full-time, super intense program where you meet investors in the ecosystem, you kind of go through programming with mentors, you get access to oodles of resources and tools and people and just everything that you could possibly imagine, and kind of gives you a really good foundation and base to kind of launch from wherever you are. So in this cohort that I was in, there was 12 startups. And so I think we were about 28 in total. 6 of the startups were solo founders and the rest were kind of a mix between 2 to 3. And it was the first ever kind of business accelerator on that kind of global scale that was, I forget the exact stat off the top of my head, but it was majority women, female founders, or mixed gendered teams.
Yeah.
And the managing director, Kirsten Hunter, who kind of selected the cohort.
I go to the gym with her, just saying.
Love that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
She really flipped the script on what we kind of know about the VC landscape and the current ecosystem, and was just like, nah, we know that there's a problem, and we talk a lot about change, and a lot of people harp on in a performative way, but she wanted to create real action and change, and to do that you had to change the full pipeline. So you had to change, you know, how many people were coming into the application process, how many you then selected for the interview process,
Yep.
and then how you kind of put together the cohort in the end. So it was a lot of work for her. She's written some kind of deep dive like content around how she structured that pipeline so that other people in the industry
Can follow suit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really cool program. I think less than 1% of people get in around the world. It's super prestigious. It was fucking full on. Am I allowed to swear?
You can swear.
I'm a swearer. It was full on. I think it was one of these things that I saw it and thought of it as this professional moment. I was, you know, going to have a breeze. It was going to be like amazing. I would get a lot out of it. But it was so transformative, both personally and professionally, in terms of, like, I didn't expect it to be so emotional on a personal level, but it was full on.
Yeah. When David and I came in, which was right at the end of the program, and we were brought in, I think, to try and sort of sculpt your presentation so they'd have peak impact, is the way I guess I'd call it.
Yeah.
And everyone was pretty, at that point, rabbit in the headlights. Everyone was like, what have we got here? And I think that notion of what gets in our way is really, really interesting. What gets in our way of being successful, of carving out a business, of being in a program like that, because there's structural issues, obviously. And my podcast, like you are, we're both here are trying to empower women. And there's structural issues, but there's also critical thinking and emotional issues that also impact on our capacity. And I hate to use the term, but to be the best of who we are when we're under pressure. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's funny because I think, you know, that must have been the second time I met you, but you were there when this like pressure cooker moment happened for a few of us. It was high stress. We were in those final few days of preparing for what's called demo day. And demo day is where you pitch to a few hundred people who are a mix of investors, people in the ecosystem, government, and friends and family and things like that. So, you know, getting up and speaking on stage is intense, even if you're practiced, well-versed, confident speaker. But getting up and presenting, I think, in that environment just added another layer of, you know, ooh. And so you and David were kind of joining us in those final few kind of days in that lead up. And I know that you were there when, for me, especially, I was feeling super emotional and super like stressed, basically, you know, really tired, really like at the end kind of sprinting towards, you know, we needed to have a video, we needed to have a presentation, we needed to have our script, we needed to have it memorized, all those things. And it's funny how outside of Techstars, I feel so different to how I was inside of Techstars. And I was saying to Bronte Campbell recently, she was one of the women in the cohort with me, I was saying it's funny because I feel like everyone saw the worst side of me because I was much less confident and much more just like overwhelmed. And why I said kind of at the beginning of our conversation why it was so transformative and why I found it a lot harder personally is because I haven't worked in an environment that was in an office for, well, forever, really. I worked at the Iconic at the start of my career in my early 20s when it was picnic tables and internet dongles and you could do whatever you wanted in any direction, and it was just...
So it was very, very free-flowing?
Very
unstructured,
unstructured. I've never been in a corporate environment, really, maybe like a 3-month stint here or there. And so coming into this corporate building, office, different scheduling. And as someone who is neurodivergent, I found it so overwhelming being around so many people. I'm used to working alone. I'm an only child. I'm kind of more of a solo kind of person. And so I found all of those things, like even the lighting, like everything overstimulating and very overwhelming, being around so many people, big opinions.
So
big
when
stuff.
you say you're neurodivergent, what do you mean?
ADHD was my diagnosis when I was last year, actually.
Yeah. All the smart people have ADHD.
They do. Apparently 70% of entrepreneurs are neurodivergent.
And why do you think that is?
Because we can't follow rules. We need to think outside the box. And I think I'm someone that always need things to make sense. And I struggle with things if they don't make sense to me personally. And that's like the 9 to 5. Like, why do we have to be at a 9 a.m. desk job? And why do we have to go to school and learn like that? And why do we... And those things that I struggled in those environments. I struggled really academically in school. I struggled really in the 3-month stint is because I could only literally last 3 months of going to an office and being on time and things like that. But I think those kind of restrictions and boundaries that people face in the 9 to 5 then push people who have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit out of those kind of arenas. And so I found going back into that environment just a lot, basically a lot to be around, a lot of people, a lot of noise, a lot of light, a lot of everything. So it's
interesting. It's full on. It's interesting that you say that about ADHD, and how I certainly think that there's been through the lack of understanding about ADHD, and they have been locked out of those processes. David's ADHD, and I would say that there's a lot of similarities between what you're talking about and the way David operates. We have a business that is different in its approach. We've taken acting skills and some psychology in business and melded it into this sort of consultancy that at the time we did it, it broke ground because nobody was doing that. Like everyone's doing it now. NIDA and the whole, every casting person in Australia is now doing it. Not as well as us, if I can say that.
I can confirm.
Yeah.
I do like the method.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So it's just very, very interesting of how do we, because we so need you and your style of thinking in order to stop the development and encouragement of women, this is what I think, from being, I hate the use of the term, I don't know how, being the best of who they are, because there's so many structural impediments in the way of women getting ahead. And to your point, so much of it is performative. We have to, the gender pay gap or whatever else we're talking about, the notions of empowering women, and this is what I've come across in my business as well, are just performative. No one's actually doing it. Because how do we need to change the structural impediments, but it's not just that. It's also the way we are socialized and the way we live in a fundamentally patriarchal society makes it very difficult for women to actually to get ahead, to break through those barriers, and to be as successful and to be wealthy and to be independent and to have agency. I find it really interesting that you have utilized that neurodiversity and are as successful as you are, because I imagine in terms of your emotional life, and as you say, being in that environment was quite taxing for you. Can you tell me about that, how taxing it was? What is it about being around a lot of people?
It's so funny because I would say, like, when I'm like outside of Techstars, I would not even call myself a super emotional person. I'm almost like the opposite. I'm usually just so kind of chill. I'm definitely more on the avoidance side. Definitely.
What do you mean by the avoidance side in terms of conflict, or
like in terms of attachment theory? Like if I had to be avoidant, stable, or anxious, I'm more of an avoidant person, and I'm just more of like a. I think growing up as an only child, being raised as an only child.
Where did you grow up?
middle of absolute nowhere, like in the bush, side of a mountain,
In
little
Australia?
tiny creek. Yeah, in Australia.
Right.
Inland from Brisbane and in Queensland, in a little tiny place called Mount Collery, population 90, with a single mum. And so lots of silence from childhood and lots of quiet and lots of nature and lots of just, I guess, my own company. And so...
Were you happy?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, when I look back, I used to have this, like, I think I've said this before, I used to be so embarrassed about my childhood. It was really different to everyone else, and my life kind of changed when I had an opportunity to go to boarding school, and that kind of shifted everything for me when I was a teenager. And so when I used to look back, I was always really embarrassed about my childhood, and I didn't really ever talk about it and things like that because the world that I lived in changed, whereas now... as an adult, I'm just so, like, in awe of my mom and in awe of the childhood and these kind of unique experiences that I had as a kid, kind of just being a feral little fairy in the bush. And I think that I've just, you know, grown up with more, like, chill, quiet vibes. And so then... when I did go to boarding school and I was living in a house full of girls that was crazy.
What was that
and
like?
Full on.
What was that like?
It was a lot. It was a lot. Oh gosh, it was a lot.
You would describe yourself as an introvert, is that right?
Oh, I don't know if I would actually. I present as an extrovert, for sure. Most people would assume I'm an extrovert. But I think I am an extroverted introvert because I really do have a lot of, I think I've got a lot of coping mechanisms that allow me to present as an extrovert and be very social, bubbly, chatty.
Sure.
Deflect from myself in a lot of group situations.
Yeah.
And then, but my internal system is like dying on the inside, and I'm someone who
Okay,
really
how do
needs
you
quiet
recharge?
time.
How do you
quiet time?
Okay.
Being
So-
alone,
yeah.
as long as someone else is in the other room.
Yeah. So that's
I'm
what we
someone
know.
that really likes like one-on-one connection, or like maybe like 4 max, like as in a group of 4 in total. But I'm someone who struggles in like the larger kind of setting, and I struggle in like networking events or things where there's a lot of people, a lot of different questions, that kind of thing. It really drains me.
Yeah, it's interesting just about the notion of introversion and extroversion, because they would say that the way you recharge explains whether you're introverted or extroverted. So,
okay.
So if you recharge by being on your own, then they would say that's more on the introverted thing. Someone like me who's truly extroverted, I need to be around people. But talking about that, and you do wonder about these labels, right? Because I also really like one-on-one. I don't enjoy small talk, and I hate networking, right?
God, yeah.
And because you'd have to say, who likes it? Who wants to be in a room of people trying to sell themselves? It's vile.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know, but I just don't go to networking events because it just gives me such anxiety.
Yeah, terrible. I know.
It gives me such anxiety, and you've got to be so on, and I find myself, I get super drained at things like that.
Yep.
I get super, super drained, and I will just come home and just need to sit in silence. And so when Techstars finished, especially after the demo day, I just like needed to come home, and I just sat in silence for a bit. And I feel like it took me to like January to kind of like recharge my batteries because I was so depleted.
So you have been invited to speak at Davos, or you have?
No, so I got accepted into the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders program for 2025. So every year they have, I think there's 1,400 alumni now, but they accept about 80 people from around the world into their program. It's a 3-year leadership program, and what it's aiming to do is encourage people under the age of 40 to kind of develop their leadership skills who want to create change and impact in a number of different kind of verticals that the World Economic Forum kind of participates in.
Uh-huh.
And so it recently got announced in April that I was one of 2 Australians that got into the program, which is super, super exciting.
How did they tell you? Did they tell you by email? Did they ring you? What did they do?
It was on email, and I definitely didn't think I was getting in. I feel like Techstars and this was these 2 really weird moments where I was like really like, why on earth would I get in? And getting in, I was like, holy shit, like that email says that I got in. That's so weird kind of thing when I got it. And then I had to keep it a secret for so long, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then it just finally got announced, and I mean, it's so cool. You meet all these really interesting people. I was on this call the other day with this incredible woman. She was the captain of the women's cricket team in Pakistan for a number of years. And, you know, I was on a call with this girl, or this woman rather, who is a coral researcher in Australia for National Geographic. And so,
oh my God.
It's really
that would be my
interesting.
dream. Just fascinating people, right?
Yeah, fascinating people who that you don't even need to worry about small talk, because you straight into being like, I'm so curious, I'm so interested, I'm so excited. Just tell me everything that you can tell me, because I need to absorb everything that you do and want to know what you do, because it's so outside of what I know. And so for me, those kind of conversations are actually super energizing. Being on the podcast, super energizing. Like, I absolutely thrive in that one-on-one environment of speaking to someone who is literally blowing my mind.
Yep.
But in groups, I'm dying.
Yeah. I totally get it. So, what is your, like, what's your purpose? What are you doing? What's your shtick? What are you doing here? What's the overarching purpose of what you do?
I think it's like multi-layered, and it evolves all the time, but I kind of opt out to what society tells us we have to do. And so for me, it's for myself. My shtick is like creating the dream life for myself. Lifestyle design is really important. The kind of career that I want, what's going to fulfill me. It's that for me, but it's also showing what's possible to others. And I also think, like, it's really about championing women who want to build that independence from a job, from a partner, from anything that's kind of holding them to a system that they don't need. And so, you know,
hang on. So let me take you back. So let's just say I'm someone and I'm in a job and I'm not enjoying that job, or I'm in a relationship and the relationship is not serving me. So your shtick is partially about why are you staying in the job? Why are you staying with the partner? Is that right?
Yeah.
Showing me that I've got choice?
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
So you do that through a number of different ways. You show up by showing people who are doing it. So everyone on the show who is building these businesses and changing their life through business, who want to build wealth through the lens of business to create their dream life.
On your show?
On the podcast,
On the podcast. Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of, we do podcasts, we do newsletter, we do social. So we have a lot of different channels that we produce and publish content for.
And when you say we, who's that?
Me and my team.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So FSC, I mean Female Startup Club.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that creating your own independence, creating your own financial independence of a job, of a partner, building a business that allows you to start asset building, savings building, fulfillment building, and just confidence building as well. Because when you have something that you're really excited about every day, and for me, you know, when I started building Female Startup Club and I got to be really excited about what I was doing, even in the crappy times, that's so powerful. It gives you so much self-confidence in your abilities and what you can achieve in your lifetime.
So let's say proportionate to the population of, say, what you're doing, across a population of women, how available is that sort of lifestyle or true sort of enactment of innate purpose, do you think, across a cohort of women? Do you think it's quite a narrow number of women that can do that, or is it broader than we think? What do you think?
I mean, I think we're entering such an exciting era with technology and tools that even if you're starting something really small and you've just got a small side hustle, even if it's not even actually using new tools and new technology, even if you're just flipping stuff that you're buying and selling off Facebook Marketplace, you know, those tiny little things that give you levels of independence, because you're still building things on the side, you're still experimenting. It can also be within your 9-to-5 career. You could be intrapreneurial, I think is what they call it, where within the 9-to-5 that you work within the company, you're still launching projects that make change. You're still championing change in the policies of the company that you work for. Those things are so
right. Got it.
That's all in the same vein. And so if you're able to do even just those tiny things, that builds your confidence. That might give you some extra spending money. That might give you the ability to be able to save outside of your kind of paycheck to paycheck in the 9-to-5 job. It might give you the inspiration that, or like, how am I going to say this? It might give you the inspiration to set a goal that you're working towards where you'll quit your job and travel the world for a year, whatever it might be.
Got it. Yeah.
There's so many different ways that you can look at it, or different ways you can slice it. But I think when you're able to do something that's for yourself, and you're either building your own kind of dream or your own vision, or working towards your own goals, and there's a layer of making money with that, that builds independence, that builds confidence, that builds courage. And it also allows you to start, I don't know, dreaming bigger, thinking differently about what you want for your life.
I'm glad that you said that it can be really, really small things, because I think a lot of the problem is that we hear talk about live your dream, you can be entrepreneurial, you can have more agency, but the enactment of that is somehow left out of the debate. And I know for women on this podcast, they'll be listening to this and wondering, well, what can I do because I'm on my own, or I have 3 children, or my husband is feckless, or I'm dealing with this really sort of patriarchal workplace. How can I do what you're saying? But what you're saying is it's the little things. I like that thing about, can you flip your clothing on Marketplace?
Yeah, like
right?
For me, the way that I started making like side money was literally selling clothes on eBay. I worked at the Iconic. I got a 40% discount. I would buy clothes. When I was finished wearing them, I would sell them.
Smart.
And like I would get nothing for it, like, whatever. But it was, again, pocket money and savings that I could then put into that kind of side account. And so I think even if it's a small thing, even if it's to take a step back and it's not about a money making effort, but it's about, I don't know, going to singing lessons, or choosing something that just gives you joy, that allows you to kind of be like, wow, what if I actually wanted to become a dance teacher and like change my career out of something that I hate and I just change direction? What if I become a dancer on TikTok and start making money as a creator? Or, if you're in your 9-to-5, but your passion is painting or art or crafting, just doing something really simple on social media that could work towards being able to monetize online. And that's like on the smaller kind of scale, and they're really shit examples because I'm obviously just kind of like
no,
they're
not at all. They're not at all. So that was part 1 of my conversation with Doone. Next week, we talk about how your brain's cognitive loop keeps you trapped in a state of inertia. So many of us smart women have much more choice than we think. Thanks for tuning into Why Smart Women with me, Annie McCubbin. I hope today's episode has ignited your curiosity and left you feeling inspired by my anti-motivational style. Join me next time as we continue to unravel the fascinating layers of our brains and develop ways to sort out the fact from the fiction and the over 6,000 thoughts we have in the course of every day. Remember, intelligence isn't enough. You can be as smart as paint, but it's not just about what you know, it's about how you think. And in all this talk of whether or not you can trust your gut, if you ever feel unsafe, whether it's in the street, at work, in a car park, in a bar, or in your own home, please respect that gut feeling. Staying safe needs to be our primary objective. We can build better lives, but we have to stay safe to do that. And don't forget to subscribe, rate and review the podcast and share it with your fellow smart women and allies. Together, we're hopefully reshaping the narrative around women and making better decisions. So until next time, stay sharp, stay savvy, and keep your critical thinking hat shiny. This is Annie McCubbin signing off from Why Smart Women. See you later. This episode was produced by Harrison Hess. It was executive produced and written by me, Annie McCubbin.